Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
What is the weirdest thing that has happened to you?
I have plenty of weird things happen to me. My parents bought a big old house and I lived there for almost my entire life. We used to talk about weird things happening there. They told me they used to hear a mess in the kitchen during certain nights, things breaking down, pans and pots clanking. So they went to the kitchen and everything was normal. Other nights or afternoons, all the water taps were open out of the blue. They even had to dig a hole in the middle of the living room because one night, one of their friends came to the city to buy some stuff for his business, and it got late. Also, it was December, and there was a chance of heavy snow, so he asked them for a place to spend the night. He said the living room was okay. They woke up early in the morning. They always woke up around 5 a.m., and their friend was nowhere to be seen. He went out and slept in his truck. During breakfast, he told them that in the middle of the night, he could hear something knocking on the floor, but as if it was under it. Later in the week, they dug up that spot and found some stuff like steel balls, train rails, pots, etc. They said nope and threw them back in and closed it up. Years later, my aunt took her own life in one part of the house that's basically like a guest house. My aunt was living with my parents and she was in the guest house. My older sister told me that one day, she bought a new wardrobe and plenty of dresses and stuff. So the weird thing is that one of her dresses vanished when she went to take a bath. She left it on the bed and was going to use it, but when she came out of the bathroom, there was nothing. She asked around, but no one took it. Weeks later, the dress reappeared near the door to her room, all covered in dirt. Now to the wardrobe incident. My aunt bought a lot of new furniture for the place and some neighbors came to see. My sister took them in. They went to see the bedroom, and there was water leaking from the roof. It hadn't rained, and there were no water pipes on the roof, so the water was right above the wardrobe, and there was also a puddle under it. She opened the wardrobe and everything inside was dry. She checked the top and it was dry as well. She said it was as if the drops had just gone through the wood. A couple of years later, my aunt took her own life because of chronic depression. My other sister says that in her room, she heard someone calling her by her name some nights or mornings. She thought it was my parents because her window is near the kitchen window, and you can hear everything from there. But she says she went to ask them, and they hadn't called her. Also, something said, "Shh," when you were talking. That happened to me years later when my sister got married, and I took her room as mine. I was singing a song one night, and I heard a loud shh. It happened in the same room to her kids as well. My niece is 15, and my nephew is 8. They were talking one morning, getting ready for school, and heard that. And something called my niece by her name as well. She even says she saw someone going to the kitchen when she slept in the living room, and also heard the same clanking and mess around in the kitchen. After using my sister's room as mine, I took one of the guest house's rooms as my apartment when I was a teenager, and I got the same weird stuff. Computer turning on during the night or in the mornings, water taps running, something knocking on my window one night, even though the window is inside the property and leads to the backyard. A friend told me my house has a weird vibe, that it feels somehow heavy.
While exploring an abandoned leisure center with disused gym equipment and pools, a pretty cool spot, notice something odd in one of the outdoor pools which is full of rainwater, damaged floats, branches, etc. In the middle of the pool on one of the floats there is what I assume to be a dead cat or dog. It has very little fur, just patches, and I'm shocked to see its face resembles a rat, complete with sharp protruding front teeth. The legs are spread out, almost like it's sunbathing. The eyes are closed. It's fucking hideous. I'm guessing it's been there a while. It looks gross. Honestly, I've never seen anything more vile. Somewhere between rat, dog, cat, quite large, not decaying at all, just hideous. Right next to the pool, in some bushes there's this weird container. In fact, we discover there are many like it around the grounds. Look kind of like cat carry boxes. But they don't have conventional doors. They appear to have been fully sealed units, made of thick, hard plastic with air holes in the top, and the front has been precision sliced off and is still there on the ground. There are small bowls with food and water in them. We find numerous boxes like this, all with bowls which have food in. The food is fairly fresh. Exploring the grounds, we find weird shit like this, and signs somebody is living in a small cabin. We're scratching our heads trying to make sense of it all. But when we head back to the pool, the creature that had been laying there was gone. No sign of it anywhere. We noped the hell out of there after that. I was with 2 friends. We'd all seen the thing there plain as day. Sure, it was a drowned, dead, deformed dog or cat that had begun to look like a rat in the water. But it had vanished. And it was clear from the containers with food by them that someone was actively putting food out. Sadly, I didn't have a camera. I know nobody will ever believe me, but I've since heard urban myths about creatures matching this description.
The house I grew up in was haunted. When we moved in, there was a crucifix on every wall of the house. There was a clothes chute that went down into a wooden cage in the basement. Inside the cage, someone had scratched "help" into the wood. My brothers, sister, and I shared a room across the hall from my parents' room. We would often see a small girl with a knife standing next to my parents' bed. Random things like clothes or food would be missing for weeks and just show up again. Would hear what sounded like thousands of marbles falling down the steps from the attic, but never found anything on the steps. Anytime one of us got hurt and bled, the activity would get worse. We found my sister's Cabbage Patch dolls and stuffed animals in the attic, all torn up with the heads ripped off some of them. I could go on and on about all the things that we saw and heard.
That's gnarly. Tell us more, anon.
My mother was using an electric hedge trimmer and nearly cut her finger off. We were poor and couldn't afford to call an ambulance, so my brother, who was 15, drove her to the hospital. I was 12 and left to take care of my younger siblings. We were in the living room when we heard footsteps upstairs in my bedroom. This room was in what used to be the attic where most of the activity was happening. We were terrified, to put it lightly. I needed help, so I called my grandma and told her what had happened to my mom, and told her something was going on upstairs. She told me I was just scared and imagining it, and to call a neighbor and ask if we could come stay with them until Mom got home. Unfortunately, when I called, nobody answered. I went back to my living room and everything was okay for a little while. My brother's friend showed up at the door and we told him what happened. He didn't believe us and wanted to prove there was nobody upstairs, so we all went with him to check out the room. He opened the door and the room was trashed. On my dresser, I had some batteries and springs from a pull-out bed couch. They flew off and hit the wall next to us. We ran for our lives out of the house and into the backyard. We just sat there waiting for Mom to get home, not saying a word. When she got home, we went back inside and everything seemed normal. The whole summer I saw things in my room until we moved to a new city. I've never seen anything like it again since.
Okay, so I can't recall if this is the absolute strangest thing that's ever happened to me, but I was reading this thread the other day, and it kind of resurfaced in my mind. I think I was about 17, 18-ish at the time, so it was a good few years ago now. Was in my local town's high street trying to catch the bus back to my neighborhood. Got stopped in the middle of the street by an older kind of raggedy-looking lady in her late 50s or early 60s. Hard to recall the exact conversation word for word, but I believe she asked for some change for something specific I've forgotten now. Obviously, I was about to catch the bus, so I was like, I would give you some, but sorry, I need it for the bus. She went on to beg a little more, but I was still like, nah, I gotta go, please. Then she was like, do you not recognize me? 'Cause I know you. Obviously, that got my attention real good, so I just stood and looked at her closely for a second or two and thought, I have never ever seen this woman before in my life. While I was thinking all this over, she then said something along the lines of, well, I'm shocked you don't remember me, 'cause I know you live in, proceeds to say my rough address. Meanwhile, I see the bus almost leaving, and I don't even think I said anything back after that. I just start running, man. I got on that bus freaked out and have never really thought about it all till going over this thread. My experience may seem tame or lame to most, but it's something I can't and probably might not ever be able to explain.
4th of July, 2 years ago. I was on a date with my now boyfriend. It had been a good day. We'd spent literally hours outside of some ice cream shop, talking to one another. Normal couple stuff, I guess. We weren't really planning on seeing any fireworks, but since things were going well, he suggested we find somewhere to watch them. We headed towards the local lake, only to find the cops there telling everyone to leave. No biggie. Boyfriend tells me he knows a really exclusive small park out in the more rural part of town. Says he goes there a lot with friends to hang. Sounds good to me. So I agree, and he drives us there. It's dark by the time we arrive, almost 11 p.m. Parks are tiny, quite literally a small parking lot with maybe 6 spots available, all facing out into the park. It's not really much of a park, more so a small semi-wooded field with a single table to sit at. He asked me, "Do you want to get out?" I told him no because it was kind of cold, and also I was just getting bad vibes. So we stayed in the car and continued chatting. There's this bush out by the table, it keeps moving. We both comment on it, saying it looks really freakish. Both on edge, I decide to play into the mood. I put on some creepy music and make note of the time. It's 11:30. I tell him we should leave soon. The park closes at 12 a.m. He agrees, and we start wrapping up. Suddenly, a car pulls up into the park. It's black and has fog lights. It's big. I couldn't ever tell if it was a Jeep or a Hummer. Windows are blacked out. Park the car diagonally, fog lights shining into our windows, almost blocking the only exit. Before I can say anything, a dude gets out. Short, fat, bald, wearing a wife beater and some shorts. He loops around the back of our car and starts taking photos of our license plate. His flash kept going off, and he was holding his phone sideways. We're both terrified now, urging boyfriend to drive, but he can't reverse without hitting the dude. The dude loops around the front of the car, starts taking photos of us. There's a pause, and my boyfriend puts the car in reverse. The guy proceeds to move towards the driver's window. He's alternating between pounding on the window now and waving. Boyfriend whips out, and the guy tried to chase briefly on foot. The road away from the park and back into town is just a long, dark, rural road. Boyfriend's going maybe 70. See the Hummer or Jeep's fog lights in the background. We're both dead silent, scared. We manage to lose him and pull into a public 24/7 shopping district parking lot. Never see or hear from dude again. No idea what he wanted. Still think about it a lot. Best case scenario, he was an unmarked park official, there to close the park down early. It's weird though, if he got our plates, you'd think we have gotten a ticket or something. Never did.
I worked security at this building back in 2011. 10-story office building. Worked night shift. I would get there around 8 p.m. and do my first round. Almost everyone was gone. Few cars in the parking lot. Did my next round at about midnight. Everyone was gone. Just left my car in the parking lot. At this point, I have checked that every door was locked inside and out twice. Third round I did around 3 a.m. When I got to the third floor, I unlocked the men's restroom to take a piss. When I came back out a minute later, the nearby utility closet was open, and all the mops and cleaning supplies and whatnot had been seemingly thrown all over the place, and the main corridor was littered with it all. The closet was totally empty. I'm talking a lot of shit. And I didn't hear a thing from the bathroom. I don't know what happened, but it was freaky. Only non-paranormal explanation is that someone was hiding in the closet and decided to mess with me or something. I don't know. I left the mess where it was and never told anyone there. Nobody ever mentioned it. The mind goes to strange places walking around an old-ass building by yourself. But that was truly unexplained. Wish I had more to say on it, but that was it.
I'm not even sure how to describe this. Some kind of memory crossing experience, maybe. Earliest memory I have is me jumping on my parents' bed. Memory starts in the third person, like I'm watching myself from the doorway, before something just seems to change, and I'm looking through my own eyes, somewhere around 3 to 6 years old, accidentally reenact the Little Monkeys nursery rhyme. Fall off the bed, head hits a metal bed frame propped against the wall. Don't remember pain, but remember laying on the floor and then being in my parents' car. Not like I regained consciousness, but like a gap in my memory. My head is gushing blood, My parents had put a towel over my head at some point. Dad mentioned something about stitches as they drive me to the hospital. Remember sitting in the waiting room for an uncomfortably long time while blood is still just flowing out of my head. Reach up and touch my wet hair, stare at red fingers. Wince. Now I feel pain, but it's like my hair being pulled. Don't remember the rest of the day. Be many years later, I was a teenager. Offhandedly commented to Mum about how impressed I was, that I don't have any serious brain damage despite the number of head injuries I sustained growing up. Mentioned the time I crawled under a table and a heavy candle fell on my head. The time I hit the back of my head on some ice after slipping and falling, hitting the metal frame of our pool, a stick that I hit myself in the head with because I was a stupid kid. She remembers all of this. Get to the time I fell off the bed. Mum gets confused, says this never happened to me. But something like that happened to my sister. Goes on to describe it in detail. It's identical to what I remember happening to me. Dad backs this up. Know that I was never told about it before, because this was the first time I'd heard of this. I realized that at the time of that memory, I wasn't even aware of the fact that I had a sister, even though she's several years older than me.
Don't mind me. I don't have the best grammar, and this isn't really a weird story, but something I've never been able to figure out. Every weekend, my older brother and sister would go out, so my parents would let me rent out an N64 game. I got Star Wars PodRacing. I remember waking up like I did every Saturday morning, pretty hyped to jump on for a long day of gaming. I walked out and noticed the Nintendo 64 and TV were left on, mid-game. I unpaused it, and it was on a part of the track I'd never been able to access, since the barriers are pretty tight to get past on that level. I didn't think anything of it, besides how cool it was that I got to free roam endlessly outside of that track, until I got bored and restarted the game. I thought maybe my dad had a go at playing, highly unlikely since he's never done that, but just a possibility since he was the only person home at the time. I asked him a few days ago about it, and he said he didn't, and asked if I was dreaming. He's a pretty honest, serious guy, and doesn't ever talk shit, so I believe him. I'm pretty sure it wasn't a dream, as it's still a very vivid experience, like anything that happened to me at that age, unlike a dream. I bought the game on Switch to try and access the level and have a look around to see how possible it is to glitch to that part of the endless open map, as I have no fucking idea who did it or how it got there.
Have very vivid dreams every so often, extreme déjà vu. One dream had about a year before, where I was in a massive pileup and I killed a girl in a black sedan in front of me. Remember being weirded out because I noticed my truck had fancy rims, but I'm cheap, and had the basic steel ones. 6 months go by and I've pretty much forgotten about it. I curbed my 2 tires on the passenger side and have to get new tires, go on Craigslist and find a guy. They are fancy platinum package tires for cheap. Score. Put them on and look at the truck. Remember the dream? Shocked Pikachu face.jpg was super paranoid about taking the turn. Have to take the same off-ramp to get home every day for about a month. Then I gradually forget about it, and a few months later I'm going to make the turn and I get goosebumps. Something has me freaked out. Then I realize that it's the same traffic as the crash. Oh shit. I slow down and change lanes closest to the shoulder. Black sedan shoots past. Fucking truck completely dies. No electrics, steering pump dead, brakes are shit. Oh shit. I swerve into the shoulder and shoot past the black car who rear-ended someone, other cars slamming into other cars, coasted off the road, and into a shallow ditch. Get out to help, everyone is pretty much okay. Same girl in car, I'm super spooked by this point, but know to keep my mouth shut, everything turned out okay, wow. When I went to check my truck, it would not crank over for a good 5 minutes. Then it fired up, never had it die before or ever since. Also had several other cases of déjà vu. This might make me sound like more of a schizo, but the Mandela effect where there is a squiggly Q in the F in Ford. That shit was not there. And then bam, Q's on the dealership and I was like WTF.
I've had visions after I woke up that lasted for hours, and I don't like talking about them so much. It started with me and small baby angels holding me above Earth in space. I remember they had trumpets in their hands as well. After that, I woke up and felt heat on my forehead. Half of my day felt like I saw miracles everywhere, until I got home to myself, and shortly after that, it felt like hell, and I had an unusual pain in my stomach, bowels. It felt like something inside me scratched them. I thought I was going to die, and I was thinking about my mom at that moment, like how I wished I was a better son. It stopped afterwards. I left out some details for now. I've had a few other stories as well, but they were never that intense and life-changing. I should really write about my whole day at that moment, from beginning to end, but that would take time.
I have lived out a bunch of dreams, and it is always deja vu for me. Most are from a time span when I was completely sober and was court-ordered to rehab. For some reasons, a lot of those dreams appeared to have played out, but it's not like I can recall them until the deja vu hits. I see it as I'm on the right path, separate from that month of dreams. I had one dream premonition in high school, though it was meaningful. I was under a bridge with my friend. We wrote our names, and right after that, I looked down. I see the city truck coming down that dip in a certain spot in town. Spot I am never in. Well, about 6 months later, I'm doing community service with that friend. We're under the bridge finishing our Saturday of community service. I tag my name, he does too, and then I look down. I see that same city truck with City Work Darwin driving it. He was a community service guy. Right when I saw that truck, I knew I lived out the dream. It was odd, but like I said, basically meaningless. It makes me think we don't know much about consciousness's thoughts, dreams, etc.
I had deja vu for an entire day. I knew what everyone was going to say, like I'd seen this episode 20 times. This was happening at work. Then I was driving home, and my girlfriend is texting me, asking me if I want her to pick up some dinner. I don't respond because I'm driving and kind of just forget about it. Then when I get home, I think, oh shit, I should have called her. Then she starts pulling her car beside mine, gets out with some takeout. I don't think anything of it. We eat later, and she mentions she talked to me on my way home, but we never talked. That's how she knew what I wanted. I never use my phone while driving. I look at her phone and see there are 0 calls while I was driving home, but still insists I called her. The entire day was bizarre.
Christmas Day 1990, 5 years old. Remember it like yesterday. Parents bought me a remote control excavator, the kind where you put the oil in and it makes smoke. Mom said I could only play with it downstairs because she did not want me knocking stuff down. Dad puts it downstairs. We get done with the usual Christmas morning stuff. Stoked to go play with that excavator. Go downstairs. The basement is half finished. 60s style with a bar on one side and utility on the other. A wall with a doorway divided the basement. Excavator on the finished side. I get downstairs and I see something bright in the doorway. It was a lady, short with a headscarf. Hair was long, wavy and flowing. Face was soft. Eyes just pure white light like the rest of her. Robed but could not see feet. Just hovering. Hands open. Picture attached is relevant, but pure white everything. I glared for about a second or two. I booked it upstairs. Was scared shitless. I've been scared to go into that basement ever since. Would not go downstairs alone till I was like 8. Later in life, went to the catacombs in Rome, and that was the typical size of a person way back when. My theory is, I saw Our Lady, or Mary Magdalene. I have never questioned faith since seeing that.
I was able to astral project as a child and was visited by all manner of entities. I was obsessed with the idea of seeing through an other's eyes. I believe I once managed this successfully. Laying in bed, I focused mentally on another child in my class at school who I didn't know too well, but I admired and wanted to befriend. I focused and focused and focused until I felt like my eyes opened and then opened again. I sat up in a bed not my own, in a room not my own. The lights were out, but the moon was bright and lit the room enough to make out small details. I looked at the hands, aware they were not my own, and hearing or sensing some kind of pushing alarmed scream. As much as I was aware the hands weren't mine, I could feel the presence of the other. A part of their consciousness was aware it wasn't in control. The hands were aware I was not theirs. The next day the boy was very low. I asked if he was okay, fully aware of what I'd done. He said he had nightmares and had been sleepwalking. We became friends shortly after this, and I visited his house physically, in my own body. His bedroom was the same as the room I'd seen in the body, not my own. I've never tried to do this deliberately ever since, although it did reoccur once more when I unintentionally woke up in someone else's body. They went to the mirror and screamed at their reflection, waking me up. It was someone I knew, but liked to avoid and stay away from, however. After the experience, I made up a reason to pay them a visit, just to scope out their home. Again, the interior was exactly the same. The messy bedroom and living room, the gross bathroom and scuzzy mirror. Anybody else had any experiences in any other body in this way? Echoing some of the anons above who prophesy words and phrases, or even events and situations. Later in my life, I believe I was able to wish death and harm on others through mental focus. At high school, there were lots of bullies, but I often didn't mind the bravado of bullying. I was used to it and would do a bit of bullying myself. There was a bully culture for sure, but there was one who would never openly attack. He would take opportunities to inflict physical or mental harm when nobody else was looking. It was malicious and sneaky, and he loved it. He'd smile with this evil glint in his eyes when he saw the impact on your face. I desperately wished him dead, obsessively wished he would die. With an intense focus, I imagined him dying, drowning. I channeled my hatred on high. Some time went by, a few weeks. He wasn't around school at all. Enough for me to forget about him and move on. Then came the assemblies, teachers and students weeping and crying. He had ended himself, taken a lethal dose of sleeping pills and dropped off a bridge, was found face down afloat in a river. I felt terrible, a terrible satisfaction and an awful sense of dread and guilt. I swore never to think ill of another again, at least not with such burning intensity. However, years later, I believe I accidentally triggered something similar, causing my ex's mother to have a stroke. Her mother was mean. She was cruel, strict, rude, rich, entitled, and mean. She caused so much misery for both me and my ex. Without any conscious intention of malice, I started writing and singing some poetry along the lines of, "Goodbye, Mother, I'll never forget you." It was kind of catchy, and the two of us sang it together, but it was no big deal. Later that week, we got the news that the mother had suffered a severe stroke and may never fully recover. Get this, though. Here's the kicker. The stroke only zapped out the mean side of her. She recovered fully, albeit slightly slower than before, but she had reverted to an innocent, childlike state, full of joy and wonder. She saw the beauty in everything, marveling and laughing constantly. It was a miracle.
When I was in high school over 10 years ago, I used to have these visions while I was alert and awake. I'd be in class or doing things at home, and the best way I can describe it was like a transparency sheet, like used on old-school projectors, would be on top of my normal vision. I'd see things that felt like from a past life. I remember sitting in my graphic design class one year, and I had this very specific vision of standing outside and playing something similar to the old game Red Rover. But I was in front of a very old school, like the late 1800s, early 1900s feel. I was holding hands with other children, and we were whipping each other in this long chain until someone let go and they were out of the game. The clothes were nothing like what kids were wearing at the time. Looked handmade and super simple. Boys were wearing shorts and girls in dresses.
I drowned to death, flatlined for over 10 minutes, 3 times within the space of 2 months between being 1 and 2 years old. Every time the exact same thing happened. A freak wave came out of nowhere while my parents were taking me and my brother for a walk over stone outcroppings on the shore, and swept me into the sea and under the rocks, covering me in white sea foam. Once I was pulled from the water, the foam disappeared. I have watched one of these incidents when I was 15 to confirm it happened like they told it. It has led to a lot of strange offshoots. I can't eat fish even though I enjoy the taste and texture. If I touch fish onto my tongue, I immediately projectile vomit even on an empty stomach. I can't stand the smell of the sea, but I love the actual ocean. If I go to the beach or a swimming pool, I will spend upwards of an hour diving to the bottom and just sitting there in the quiet for as long as I can, and I don't have any explanation for why I do it. If I go to the ocean, I often think about walking into it and just continuing to walk indefinitely. It is also worth noting that I have adamantly denied the existence of the afterlife since I was 4 years old. Again, they have me on camera as a child going from happy-go-lucky 4-year-old to extremely somber when asked about it and telling them there is nothing after this. I am pretty normal in every other regard except for the existential horror and dread that this knowledge gives me. A couple more weird things I believe stem from dying when I was a child. I have had several reoccurring night terrors. They are always different but follow the same motif. Someone I feel incredibly familiarity with will be talking to me, and we will be discussing something that seems completely mundane while I live out a few days in this scenario. Mundane has ranged from being a soldier in a medieval army, to being in a cyberpunk dystopia and running drugs, to being talking to a friend about a project I forgot to do while riding the bus to school. At some point in the dream, I will become keenly aware that I am dreaming, and the person I was talking to will stop talking and freeze while everything else carries on as normal, and I will have no idea who they are and feel incredibly confused trying to figure it out. This has been going on for many years, so I've had interesting snippets such as, "Don't wake up yet," or "You weren't meant to be here this long," told to me before waking up. I feel no terror or anything from these dreams. I have extremely wild and vivid dreams in general and night terrors. Needless to say, I have been going to a psychiatrist for years, and even he is completely fucked over this, although he tried to pretend for a few years that he knew what was going on. I cannot do certain things. I don't mean that I am incapable. I just mean that I cannot do them. They are not recurring, and they are not specific, but every so often something will come up and I will block it out of my mind as completely impossible and ludicrous to attempt. I mean shit like walking down the street I use every day to go to a 7-Eleven. I will go through the same motions and then go out of my way to take another route, and when I thought about it, I just sort of accepted that it was impossible for me to go this way. 2 hours later, I went again using the normal way. I do not suffer from OCD or any kind of disorder that would explain it. Again, therapy for many years already.
Having a good youth, but still doing every single drug on the planet under the Psychonaut moniker, meet girl to do psychs with, break up, she commits self-end but fails, become gang-stalk targeted individual under the fact that I cannot handle such stress, have sister over, she calls cops on my ass, try to commit self-end as well and fails in a hotel room, visit /x/ for spiritual phenomenons constantly happening, flickering lights, failing electronics, see blue dot in vision, Bindu, post gang stalkers on both /x/ and /b/, apply for new job, 5 out of 6 jobs know everything about me, take job #6, find out I have both schizo and Freemason co-workers, still work there while dealing with mental transmission as described in CIA gate documents of transmitting, never stop a day browsing and learning from /x/, find out that I was being set up because of my natural ability of mental transmissions, being asked if I meditate a lot while I didn't, proceed to have fake artificial visions when I practice third eye breathing, have the entirety of reality break off like a Kit Kat being shared and try to live in this state among people that will never ever experience this stuff.
From the time I was super young until my high school years, I saw a hat man in my house multiple times a week. I'm not schizo, and I don't go looking for shit to scare me. It looked exactly like it does when you Google image hat man. Black silhouette, wide-brimmed hat, just staring at me. He would be in different parts of my house. My best friend saw it too. I didn't realize it was a phenomenon that more people had seen till I was in my 20s. I would see it almost every night in the room I had to pass to go to the kitchen downstairs. The room faced the stairs that went up to my room, and I would try not to look at it, but get an overwhelming sense of dread every time I went back up the stairs and had my back to the room it occupied. I would then sprint up the stairs like I was running for my life, with my heart beating up into my throat. Haven't seen it in years, but last time I went to my folks' house, my fiancé said that the folding blind doors attached to our windows in my old room opened up on their own with her staring directly at them. Very weird stuff.
I was on lunch break at a shitty job passing the time with some co-workers at the local McDonald's. I noticed the guy who was sweeping and tidying up was one of them handicaps who would routinely be brought into my job to package random small items in Ziploc bags for package and distribution. His lips looked swollen from being chewed on and his eyes sunken, but he was remarkably sweet. When he took out the broom in the utility closet at McDonald's, he placed his palm on the door and looked down with half-closed eyes, sweetly, patting the door. I was staring at him the whole time, marveling at him when he turned to me, and I heard in my head, "Stop looking at me," to which I immediately diverted my eyes. I think about that dude a lot. He's a remarkable soul.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.